You may begin, sir.
Thank you. I'd like to gavel in our special meeting scheduled for September 10, 2012. If you would all please stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Alderman Saunders.
Here.
Alderwoman Manister.
Here.
Alderman Levy.
Here.
Alderman Toomey. Alderman Cline.
Present.
Alderman Robertson.
Here.
Alderman Nguyen.
Here.
Alderman Harper.
Here.
Mayor Kell.
Thank you. Next item, approval of the agenda for the special Board of Alderman meeting for September 10, 2012. Any changes to the agenda? Motion, please.
Motion to approve the agenda as submitted.
Second.
Motion is made by Alderman Leahy, second by Alderman Nguyen to accept the agenda as submitted. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries. Next item, consideration approval of the minutes from the regular Board of Alderman meeting from August 20th, 2012. Are there any changes to the minutes?
I have changes and I'll just submit them later. Sorry.
We need to do them so we can make the motion to...
Okay, then I move that we table the minutes until next week. Or next.
Okay.
I move that we table the minutes until I have adequate time. I thought I could turn them in amended.
Okay. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second to table the minutes from the August 20th meeting. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
I think just as changes and you want to make them here, I don't know that we should go back and be making changes to the minutes without, I mean, if the minutes are, what was said was what was said, we shouldn't change them. We should change them here from what was printed. Okay, if that makes sense. Okay, thank you. All right. Next item, we have a presentation. I'm sorry.
Community center.
Sorry, we did that. Okay. All right. We have a presentation. Paula, would you like to make this presentation, please?
The City of Brentwood is a member of the St. Louis Area Insurance Trust. The St. Louis Insurance Trust has been in existence for about 27 years. Members of the St. Louis Insurance Trust are made up of municipalities that are professionally run. What Slate does is it helps about 27 cities who are members ensure that we are getting competitive rates for workers' compensation, insurance, general auto liability, and healthcare benefits. And the city became a member in 2009. There are approximately 2,900 full-time employees that are covered by Slate. And about 2 weeks ago, they had this reception to honor the municipalities that are members of Slate, and I was in attendance to accept this plaque on my behalf.
Great, thank you. Okay, next item, we are going to have a public hearing, but before we do that, to set our tax rate, or at least to discuss our tax rate for the 2012 tax year. I would like to first, before we get into that public hearing, address a flyer that was circulated over the weekend with respect to our...
Your Honor?
Yes.
Forgive me, but I'm confused. Point of order, if I may.
Sure.
What happened to item number 4, discussion of the community center, since we did not amend the agenda? I don't recall that we had this discussion.
I have it on my agenda. This was on my table.
Why haven't they posted? Okay.
Okay. So
If you want to make a motion to, it was decided at the last meeting that we were postponing any discussion on the rec center, and it was mistakenly so put on the agenda, so that was the reason. So,
More changes, okay.
Okay.
I apologize, Ebola, I did not see the change.
okay.
Thank you, Your Honor, I was just trying to follow where we were going.
Okay. Give me 1 second here, looking for my notes. And really, the reason I want to do this before we open up for the public hearing and set the tax rate tonight, I just wanted to spell what I consider to be great inaccuracies in this flyer that was distributed to the public over the weekend. First of all, I would hope that you can believe that when we tell you things that it's to our best of knowledge, they are correct and matter of fact. Secondly, the proposal that has been talked about with respect to the Board of Aldermen, there is no discussion about increasing taxes in order to increase our reserves. Historically, Brentwood has worked on very little reserves and in order to run our city. And we've done it pretty efficiently for a number of years, and this is prior to me being mayor and prior to me being an alderman. Brentwood has never been in a situation where we would have a high level of reserves, and yet we've been able to function pretty well as a community. One of the things that's being discussed, or one of the innuendos in this letter, is that we're talking about increasing taxes in order to increase our reserves, which is actually completely opposite of what historically we've done in the city of Brentwood. We have not assessed property taxes, and we have stated that the reason we did that is so that we didn't believe it was correct or the proper thing to do to collect property taxes from our residents in order to create a savings account for the city of Brentwood, especially over the last 10 years with the economic times that we've been through. So we have, for the majority of the last 10 years, assessed 0 general fund property taxes. Last year, it was set at 0. The proposal for this year is to set it at 0 again. Last year, we did assess 11 cents of our debt service property tax against the residents, which was paid. But we could have assessed 16 cents. So we waived 4 cents of that, 5 cents of that, which amounted, and we paid the balance of those out of our general revenue. Most of the debt that we've had over the years are bond issues going back to the street bond issue that was initially instituted in the 80s, and then the park bond issue that was issued in 1993. A significant amount of those revenue, or those bond payments, were paid out of city funds. We did never assess the full amount against our residents. If we had, we would probably have much larger reserves right now. But we paid for that out of those revenues, and as we move forward through, from year after year. Last year, in order to make the final payment on those bonds, we paid $150,000 out of city revenues, and the remainder was that 11 cents that we charged to the residents last year. The good news, and this is what I've stated a number of times over the last few years, is that Brentwood is in great financial shape, and our future only looks brighter. In April of 2009, the promenade was paid off, and again, one of the statements that they stated the financial health of the city was outstanding is true, and I think it is going forward. Because, again, the promenade was paid off about 6 or 7 years ahead of schedule, and that revenue for the school district, as an example, is $500,000 a year in new revenue for the school district, and for the city, as it starts to roll in, is about $2 million plus in new revenue for the city from sales tax. So, and then, going forward, the Brentwood Point TIF will be paid off in November of 2013, next year. The TIF for Brentwood Square will be paid off in May of 2014. Those two combined projects, once the revenues start coming in from that, will be an additional $2+ million in revenue to the city of Brentwood. These are the things we've been working towards for a number of years so that we can start to work on having a higher and rate are having higher reserves, and actually have a policy in order to establish those. We have talked about that for a number of years here in the city of Brentwood at the Board of Alderman level, and what those criteria would be for that. I think consistently we've said that we hope that over the next few years we're able to have reserves that will maintain a balance of at least 25% of our annual budget. And I'm talking about just our general reserves. Because the other thing that was misleading in this flyer that was put out, again, that was a snapshot of December 31st last year. And yes, our general fund revenues were just under $500,000. But the total reserves. The total reserves at that time were closer to $3 million when you combined all of our fund balances. Today, as of right now, or at the end of August 31st, we have a total reserve balance of over $5 million, and the general reserve balance is just over $1 million. That's what your reserve accounts are for. They're supposed to fluctuate up and down. And again, I just want to assure everybody that from a financial standpoint, the city's in great shape, and as it goes forward, we should be in better shape. And we should be able to build up those reserves. Just to compare and say a city's financially bad just because they don't have the reserves of some of these other communities isn't a real true picture of what's happening in the city of Brentwood. Again, we try to provide services and pay for the things as best we can. We haven't assessed utility taxes against our residents either. And I think it was mentioned that I might know those numbers, but I think a few years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, we did a calculation that estimated that by not assessing those utility taxes against the residents, we saved an average homeowner a little bit over $200 a year in utility taxes. And again, for the last 10 years in these economic times, that's a good thing for our residents. And so is the fact that we haven't assessed property taxes on our general revenue fund for that period of time as well. Our goal has been to try to keep taxes as low as possible and manage the city. And I think it's been doing pretty well. And a lot of things that we've put in place are just starting to pay off, and we're going to get to that point where we can really start and again build up a reserve and get to the point where maybe we have a year's of reserve in there. But I don't think we should do that by taxing our residents. We should do it by saving the money that we earn through the economic development, the things that we put in place here in the city of Brentwood. So that's my little spiel. I believe the city's in good financial shape. I think it's going to be in great shape and has a bright future as we go forward. And so I just think that it's very misleading when you put out things that are partially true and not necessarily give you all the facts. But again, one other point, I had already made this, but we work towards these goals and try to set these things in place. One of the things that we did this year, and I want to stress again, is we paid off the 2 general obligation bonds that our residents had that were obligations of the residents, but we never fully assessed against them. So we could have done that again, and we are not assessing this year 18.1 cents in property taxes. If we did that, the city would take in about $257,000 in revenue. But we're not doing that because we don't believe, again, that we should assess those property taxes just to put in the bank. We have revenues coming in to cover our expenses, and we'll go forward with that. So, but the proposal from the board and the tax rate that we're proposing is 0. And there's been no discussions about increasing our property tax. So it'll actually be 11 cents less than it was last year from the city standpoint. So with that, I will open it up to public discussion, public hearing for our, sure, we have one more comment, Alderman Patrick Toohey.
For those who don't know, I'm a CPA, and I probably have more experience than anyone else on this board putting together financial statements, financial training. What concerns me most about this flyer was, this is our audit report, and it's this thick for a reason, because you just can't look at one number and make an evaluation. Warren Buffett would never look at one number from a financial statement and say, I'm going to throw in $10 billion. That'd be negligence. I could come to you right now, just to put this in terms we'll understand. I could say to you, well, Brandon Dixon is the best hitting Cardinal player because he's hitting 500. Well, he has 404 at bats, and that's what this is missing. It's missing a lot of the crucial information. just can't pull one number and make an evaluation and smear. And I'm appalled some aldermen have distributed this to their ward. That's just negligence, in my opinion.
One other comment I would make too is that we have built up what I consider to be, and sometimes maybe I look at this too simple, but I look at our savings account as the money we have and that's a combination of all of our funds. But we've built that up in the last 3 years from $700,000 in cash to over $2 million in cash that we have access to in a case of emergencies, which is what reserve funds are for. Now, we don't foresee any of those emergencies, but the point is we have the ability to get over any fluctuations in the economy or losses in revenue because of something happening, because that's what the reserve accounts are for. I'll be honest with you, if I was in Clayton and my city had $20 million in reserves, I'd be asking why they're charging property taxes every year. And it's higher than what we're charging, even if we assess all of ours. So, you know, again, it's the way the city's been run, and it's the way we've been run, I think, very conservatively for a long, long time. It wasn't a process that we started, or even I started as an alderman. This is the way the city's been operating for a long time. And, but it has been a goal of ours, now that we have put some things in place, to build up those reserves. And we have talked about it publicly every year for the last 4 or 5 years when we've talked about our audit and our budget. That we need to do that when we get to this point, and we're there. And that's why this year, we had already talked about, we want a line item in the budget that strictly says these funds are being dedicated to our reserve account as a line item expense or a line item savings account, that we're going to be doing that. And the staff is working to put that together as we go through the budget process. So now, I will...
My turn.
Okay.
First of all, yes, I agree with you. You've talked about it for several years. Talk is not action. When questions, good questions, get brought forward, action sometimes happens. I take exception to Alderman Toohey saying that an alderman that distributed this flyer, that were, residents in my constituent, is negligence. Can you please tell me on that flyer, are the numbers wrong?
Again, I'm going to rely on the fact that I'm a CPA with financial training.
Thank you.
I tell you, if you look at this, there's a reason the language states from an audit standpoint, you take it as a whole. If I went out as a CPA and signed off on numbers that were partially correct and didn't include the financial picture as a whole, the ethics committee would probably take away my license. I'm at the highest standard.
There is not, residents put this out. It was their take on information. So it's a legitimate concern. It's always, if the residents are concerned, it's legitimate.
But for now, they're all...
Listen, the reserves, it's not like you're saying the whole financial picture of the city. It is what the reserves are. And although there's 3 million, and now Mayor Kelly said 5 million in the reserves, some of those are in restricted accounts, capital improvement accounts, parks and recs, and can only be used for those improvements. The reserves that they're referring to are operating reserves, to be used only for operating expenses. And there is a rule of thumb by the professional standards, including the board that Bola belongs to, city administrators even has a reserve policy. And I do believe moving forward, we are going to have a reserve policy where we do have a minimum. And like Clayton has it in their ordinances and other cities, the minimum reserve is going to be this, and we'll try to stay near a year. Those are legitimate concerns. They're brought forward by this memo, and I think to discredit the residents because they're alarmed. I saw Alderman Kramer's interview, and he does allude to taxes, and he says we could be taking, what did you say, utility, and there's other taxes at our disposal, and they cut you off. Do you know what I mean? I mean, I don't know. Do you see what I mean? But it got out there. And when somebody emailed me or asked me about it, I did a spreadsheet showing how, because the library rolled back their rate, that our taxes are increasing and the reason decreasing. And the reason they're decreasing is because the debt service was paid off. We did our job. The residents issued that bond issue. They voted for it. They paid taxes, and they paid the bill. And they deserve for the taxes to decrease. And so that's what's happening here. But still, it does not in any way diminish the fact that we don't have but a half a month in our reserve account. And as Mayor Kelly said, the promenade paid off in 2009, which had $2 million of income, you were just saying. And it's like, well, where did that money, since we're not using taxes to put in the reserves, where did all that money go? Does it just get spent? I noticed in the expenses from 2010 to 2011, the municipal operating line alone increases $1.5 million. It's a lot of money in 1 year. And we got money from the TIFs. So there is information in here. It's a public document. It's already been uploaded to the website, and it's not even been adopted by this board. And it was there for the public to digest. So since you're a CPA, I don't think, though, you should poo-poo or whatever the ideas that maybe some of the residents or concerns they have.
Well, I just want to make one more comment before, because I think you need to understand too, these are restricted funds, and so you have a capital improvement account, you got a park stormwater account, you have a sewer lateral account, and in government operations, those funds are restricted and need to be used for those expenses. But in a time of an emergency or in cash flow issues, or when one fund doesn't have enough to pay for something, you can transfer funds in between accounts.
Timing differences are one thing.
Well,
if you're just a short day cover because a receivable came in before you got your thing. But emergency, stores closing because the crime's increasing. I mean, there could be a lot of things that could happen where we say as a board, if that reserve line was there, Patrick, as a board, we would come together and say, does an expenditure qualify, though, to dip into our reserves? That's what we should be doing, is making a conscientious effort when we're going into our reserves to say,
but again,
we need to.
You made a comment that we only have, how much, a month, half a month of operation in our reserve account. So I don't.
Operating reserves, yeah,
Okay.
I would agree.
But, so again, show me an example that, okay, if one store closes in Brentwood, all of a sudden we don't have any other revenue coming in, and all of a sudden we can't operate, you know, Borders closed, you know, and Circuit City closed, and we continue to operate. You know, that's why one of the things, we have over 700 businesses in Brentwood. And that's one of the reasons we're so fortunate in being able to operate, because we have such a diverse business base in our community. And it's not just sales tax that goes into our general revenue fund, it's the business licenses. That's the other big part of our revenue. And so, again, that's what reserves are for, those fluctuations in the economy. And I don't think anybody's disputing the fact that we want to build up those reserves. But I do take exception with the flyer that says tax increase imminent, when nobody up here has ever talked about it. Nobody has. If they have, they haven't talked about it at a public meeting. Okay? Our tax rate is what's being proposed is 0 for the city. Don't confuse the library and the police and firemen's pension fund. Those were approved separately by the voters for those operations. Okay? The voters approved 35 cents for the police and firemen's pension fund. They set their rate. The voters approved a nickel increase for the library, and they set their rate. And that's the way it's supposed to be done. But for the city, it's 0. Mr. Wayne.
Well, you know, I've got something entirely different to say. I think these things are dangerous because they go out to people who are not informed. They get them, and it scares some people. If I got this and I didn't know, maybe I was alone and old and single, and I was in income is very marginal, and I get a thing that says tax increase imminent, I'd be scared. I think these things bring fear, and I think that's bad. What is wrong with sitting down with the mayor? What is wrong with coming up here? You don't have to handle everything through little things that go out 3 or 4 times. We've had 4 times on television. Television didn't come, you know, run to us and ask us. We went to the TV people and said, come on over. We got something we want to expose to you. That's what happened. And then we got little things going. All the years that I ran for Alderman, I would have never done anything like that. I never sent one thing out to my ward with something on it, just shoved it under the door that wasn't good. I never had a bad thing to say about whoever ran against me. Check that if you want to too. I think these things are careless. I think they're reckless. I think they bring harm to a community. And I think there's no reason to ever put out some little thing like this to everybody. You want to work through the system? Come here and work through the system. It'll work. We got a great community. I think we have. I've been here a long time. I've been on Uvalde 41 years. And I've said this thing before, but I think, man, what are we going to do? The only outcome of this is going to be this. You're going to start this, and you're going to start something you wish you'd never started. Because pretty soon it's going to be just the thing to do to always send the thing out. Let's send another letter out. Let's say something about somebody else. Let's do this. I think that's the wrong way to go. We have a system of government. You can vote at an election. And by the way, if you don't like any of us, it's going to be a couple years because the voters have proved that before we have another election. That's another way you can go. But these ways of just sending things out, sneaking them out to the neighbors, you know. I got one at my door. Thank goodness I did. I'd never known about it if I hadn't. But I'm just very irate that we're going down a road that I think is careless.
Okay. I will open, one more comment and then we'll go to...
I just might want to clarify what I said. I was appalled that Alderman would distribute this. I didn't say that the residents did. Additionally, again...
I didn't distribute it.
Yes. Yes, the numbers are accurate, but it's also accurate that Brandon Dixon is the Cardinals' leading hitter. So, you can play on numbers and using them, with an agenda, it just isn't accurate.
Okay. We will open up the public hearing.
Pat Saunders, 2326 Park Ridge. To me, what's appalling is what you're hearing our aldermen say is they don't want you to know. Why? That's what we're hearing, Alderman. Here's why it's a problem. Have you communicated all this with us? Had we seen it? Had we read the mayor's report and you said, yes, this is what this is, but we have this coming, we have this coming this weekend? It wouldn't go around. But as long as you're not going to communicate with us, as long as we're too stupid to understand this stuff and you're going to try to hide it from us, this is the backlash. This is our city. This is our city. It's either true or false, and we have a right to know. That's what you're having trouble understanding. We have a right to know. Okay? So don't hide it from us. We're here to help. We're all in this together. We know the city's in good shape. Tell us how good a shape it's in. That's your responsibility. I need communications. I understand what it is to communicate. You're not communicating with us. That's what you need to do. That's all you need to do. Tell us the good things. That's all. Thank you.
Every year we have an audit, and all that information is in there, and it is published, and that's where that number came from. And so it is. We don't hide anything. It's all here. It's on our website if anybody wants to go look at it. Thank you.
Brian Rothery, 8934 White Avenue. Kind of along a similar vein, although maybe a different track. Yeah, we do need sunlight. We do need to know what's going on. I serve on the Brentwood Public Library Board. And as you all know, voters voted and approved on a nickel tax increase. There was a little bit of discussion, confusion, a little bit about what the ultimate rate would be on the voters. In our written materials that we published, we indicated that a nickel tax increase would roughly equate to about $19 on a $200,000 home. Once we learned that the effective tax rate, due to something called the Hancock Amendment, which I won't get into the details here because frankly can't speak authoritatively on it, and I suspect maybe no one in this room can, but maybe I'm wrong. Once we learned that due to the Hancock Amendment we may need to adjust it, we met as a board as soon as we realized the changed circumstance and voluntarily agreed to roll it back so that our written materials that said the assessed value would be roughly $19 on a $200,000 home actually are true. So I want to let everybody know that that's what the board did. We met, was it last Wednesday. I see here on the agenda, bill number 5698 contemplates a changed rate. I just want to make sure the numbers offhand on the rate here don't correspond with the numbers that we had in our head at the time of the meeting. So I don't know if procedurally, okay, thank you.
There's two different rates. Each sheet has a different rate, so I don't know which one's correct.
Well,
Maybe you could clarify that. Go ahead.
so, yeah, it's my interest to make sure that whatever number we arrive on actually equates to $19 on a $200,000 home. That's the bargain that the voters voted on. That's what the board intended. And it's important that we get that clarity. I don't know that I'm able to do that right here at this podium, but
With some of those numbers, but yes, we will.
okay. And I don't even believe this was going to be voted on this evening, perhaps, but we'll include them. And also, if there are other questions about that vote or the board or anything like that, I'll make myself available throughout the night.
Okay, thank you.
Can I comment? Okay, Alderman.
I'm sorry, go ahead. Sorry.
Chris Harrington. I'm a resident at 8542 Rosalie, have been since 2000. Mayor, Board of Aldermen, I hear you, Mayor, tell us that this is always the way it's been. Correct? This is the way the city's always been run, okay? I buy that for this one, but then I go back and find in the last year, a number of things have always been done a certain way, and every one of these things is either inaccurate, unexplained, or always been done that way. And every one of them, personally, is objectionable to me. And I find it ironic that when this one comes up, it's again how it's always been done. Well, if you look at the numbers on there that I compare, and I've done nothing more than look over two items on there. First of all these decided to run their cities that way, and I think they're pretty good cities. They've decided to do that. Secondarily, there's this National Trade Association that recommends this. So I think that's pretty good. Now, the fact that I'm offensive about this really doesn't matter to me. What matters to me is a continuous way that this board seems to, and city government seems to run itself behind the scenes, not open to what's really going on, and it's frightening to me. It continues to be that way. Every time we come back, it's like, what's next? So I'm not just waiting for this one, which is the third, at least, serious issue. What are you guys doing? When's it going to get better? When's it going to get better? And I hope, though, whether you like it or not, we get to do that. And I would suggest that you folks figure out a way to run this town that doesn't get half the people in here stirred up and angry. What in the world's going on? Come on.
Kogler, and I live at 8615 Henrietta.
No. Just a little louder.
Oh, sorry.
It's not a real microphone.
Normally I talk really loud. I'm not sure what's going on.
Please face this way.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Wynn, I appreciate your comments, and I understand where you're coming from on behalf of the elderly folks here in Brentwood. However, those of us that need to get involved need to know what's going on. We need to understand where the city's at. I appreciate that the budget's printed every year and that it's audited. I get that. I vote for my aldermen so that they can communicate with me. That's the point of why you're here. I don't want to be an alderman. I don't want to be involved myself in the day-to-day business that goes on with the city, but I want you to be responsible and respectful of the money that I provide to the city through my taxes. I have choices on where I shop every day. I choose to shop in Brentwood as much as I can to support my city. I've lived here, as I've told you multiple times, my entire life. I don't plan on going anywhere. So those of you that want me to go away, sorry, it's not going to happen. I'm here for the long haul. I will probably die in my home, and some poor fireman from whoever from years gone by will have to come and collect my body. I'm sorry about that. I do apologize. Having said that, I have never, in the entire time I've lived here, seen the amount of turmoil that goes on and that has gone on since everything that started to come out with Mr. Seamayer. I will have some more comments about that in the other public session because this is about taxes, not about that. I don't want our taxes increased, okay? I want them to stay at zero. I'm perfectly fine paying for the firemen and the police department's pension, and I'm perfectly fine paying what I agreed to pay when I voted for the library tax board. By the way, thank you so much for not taking advantage of that loophole, because then I would have been very angry, as would I think everybody else in this room. Be open and honest with us. Tell us what's going on. I appreciate the emails. I appreciate the information. I want to know what's going on because I want to make sure that the city's being run in the way that I feel is appropriate. I feel like I've already paid enough taxes. I don't need to pay any more, okay? And I don't know how all you all feel, but you'll be raising your taxes as well as mine should you choose to do that. At this point, I think we're on the right track, but I also think we need to really look at what we're spending and be responsible and respectful of taxpayers' money and make sure that we're spending it in the appropriate way so that we do have the ability to save money, to put it in reserve for a rainy day. Because unfortunately, most of us who live our everyday lives aren't able to have as much in reserve as we need to. We all know that. So let's make the hard choices, let's make the hard decisions to become fiscally responsible, even more so than we already have been. And let's get this on track. Thank you.
Board, my name is Mark Wilson, 2214 Haddon Lane. Anyway, I just want to speak about a couple of things.
Could you please face the microphone?
Okay. A couple of things. All right. Anyway, I just wanted to speak regarding a couple of things. Clearly, you all, I think we're all in this together, and I think you guys have a dedicated effort to try to make this the best that we possibly can be. So let's agree that right now, everything that we're saying is simply working towards the best interest of Brentwood, and we think that you're working in that avenue too. However, you made some statements on how Brentwood does business and how you've chosen to do business, which I'm sure is, if it's a way you define, then it should be explainable. And I'm a little bit curious why, when the NACSLB does make these recommendations, and that's built at the League of Cities, National League of Cities, ICMA, the Mayor's Board, nationwide, everything else, and they establish these not as rules per se, but rather as guidelines, that when we look around to surrounding communities, they've all chosen to follow this lead, and we've chosen to ignore it. Along those same lines, I did happen to go back on the annual reports, and when you look over the last 10 years, only 1 year in 2008 did we ever meet that 17% requirement or that 2 months in reserves. And I think we can all agree that much like our households and how we run our household budgets, the reason we maintain reserves is not because we necessarily have to have that money to pay for something, because we've provided for everything we do, but if we do have an emergency, if there could be some sort of weather issue, if there could be anything that caused an emergency, that we immediately had to go to funds, well, these other communities have directed that they're going to maintain between 80 to 100% in a reserve fund. That general reserve fund, which currently states where it's 4% in Brentwood. And I'm wondering, if you've chosen to go to a different avenue, how is it then that you've prepared us for seeming disaster or problem or anything along those lines? Moving on, the proposed sewer lateral line increase going from 40 to 50 cents. And this is just a question. I'm sorry, dollars. In going to the surrounding communities, they basically have a pretty firm tax of about $28 across the board, and they maintain a balance, a reserve balance. We currently are at 40, which is quite in excess, and I've lived through the sewer lateral line mishap of having flood at the bottom of my basement, so I know the problems that exist. However, I've seen the people out putting them up along White and Pine and everything else, making certain that they're working good. But why is it that our community is so much more damaged that we have to have $22 more to go to $50 as opposed to other communities who operate on $28 and still maintain a reserve? One other thing that I wanted to go over was the tax rates. Right now, if I'm not mistaken, we're getting ready to retire a debt of 11 cents. Is that correct? And if that was dropped to the bottom line, wouldn't that immediately give the citizens a tax break? So if you wanted to reallocate that in order to maintain some, either some of it could be used as a reserve in order to build up and make us a little bit safer community, or else where exactly is that going to go? I think we're in a situation where we've got a lot of problems right now. I think we're all a little bit nervous, St. Louis wide, but Brentwood also. when you start getting into the crime in Brentwood. And right now, the one unit that I'm very proud of is our police department. But when we start talking about what we do with reserves, adding a position, adding overtime, those are the sort of things that this pays. And right now, if we operated at the same $700,000 cost that we did last year, as opposed to what we planned or budgeted to spend, we would be in the red next year, okay, if something wasn't shuffled around. And one last point, Mr. Tui, we're very happy you got a college degree and became certified as a public accountant.
Hi, my name is Lynn Devon, and I live at 2469 Lewis Avenue. I've lived in Brentwood since 1995. Brentwood is the only place that I have ever lived in as an adult, as a taxpayer. You know, it was always with mom and dad. So this is the only environment that I have experience with. And until recently, I have not been quite as involved in the history of the finances of Brentwood. I am on the library board and I am the treasurer of the library, but I'm not here for that. I'm also the treasurer of Mark Twain PTO. I'm not here as that. I'm here as a resident. And one thing that I would like to share as facts, and yes, some of this knowledge is because of my involvement in the library, which has just been since last November is when I was appointed to the board. What I learned in looking at the financial statements and everything else of the city, it applies to the city as well as the branch of the library, is that the calendar year, the fiscal year starts January 1 and goes until December 31st. The majority of the revenue that is earned for that year is from property taxes. Unlike a business where you're selling a product or a service, you don't have the ability to raise the prices as your costs increase from a month to month, a day to day, week to week, whatever those circumstances kind of dictate as you would in a normal business. We don't have that option as a library, as a city. The way it's structured is all of that income is based on the taxes collected. Taxes are collected after the bills are put out in October. That means we're getting them in October, and many of us are paying them in November and December. So all of the revenue that the city is getting, or the library is getting, is coming in 2 months of the year, and it has to essentially cover all of the expenses that have happened from January until that point in time, and obviously to the end of the month, or to the end of the year. So right now, I personally do not panic when I hear that we only have a month and a half of reserves, because today is September 10th. We are due all of our money, the majority of it we'll get in November and December. So we've got a month and a half left. Okay, the money's coming in. When I personally get a paycheck, and the day after I cash my check, I'm flush. But when I get down to my next pay period, and I've paid for things that I've had throughout the week or whatever my time frame is, my bank account's a little low. And it's low because the next paycheck is coming in. And so for right now, reserves are very easily low now because we are getting ready for our next pay period. We're getting ready to have that money come into and be flush again with having plenty of reserves. So I just wanted to come and share that because I'm hearing a lot of things that didn't sit well in terms of taking a little, and this is where a statement can come out and not be. It is a correct statement. There is nothing wrong, it is very factual, but taken out of context is not necessarily the correct approach. So just keep in mind that some of the things that are going on, they are open and they are available, and it just takes just takes knowing all of the facts. You can't say there's a hole in the roof and it's raining, so therefore I have to replace my entire house. You have to assess what the actual whole situation is and not take one little sliver and assume the rest of the pieces. Thank you.
And then that's for the library, because all of their revenues come from property taxes. That
Yes.
doesn't affect the city
Yes.
the same way, right?
So, but
It's not the same.
it's not the same, but you still have a majority of income coming from the property taxes.
No, we don't have any property.
No, you don't have any property taxes.
Not residential.
Then, okay. So, you're still getting more money
Right.
later, so you have to take the whole thing.
Karen Smith. I wanted to thank Gina and Bola. They met with me from the last meeting. I mentioned that I had questions about the previous year's budget, and they met with me over the last year, and they were able to answer a lot of my questions, so I appreciated the time that they spent. I have concerns about the taxes, and I'm hoping, I've seen a lot of numbers coming back and forth, and so I'm hoping that we can get that straight tonight as to exactly what we are going to be, what the tax rates will be for next year. The reason that really I wanted to make some comments tonight is about the reserves, and although I appreciate your explanation, that was very, very helpful, I don't think that the city isn't as impacted by those property taxes coming in as much at the end of the year. And I also don't think, even with the reserve accounts being full, like getting our full paycheck, we have sufficient reserves. Bola and Gina did explain to me the ebbs and flows and timing of how funds move in and out of our city. But the recent published reserves to me of $400K seems dangerously low, especially for a city that has the amount of retail that we have. I think we should have more, so that even when our reserves are at its lowest point, it's higher than $400K. I have been observing the city and looking at those audited financials for years. Patrick, you were probably still in 8th grade. Sorry. But we've tended to, not you, we have tended to maintain between 1.2, 1.4 million. That seems to be about the number that I remember hearing. And I know that there have been aldermen, some of whom are still on this board, that have not felt that was sufficient reserves, that we should have more, especially with the amount of retail that we have. The benchmarking that we've done with the neighboring municipalities, I think, is only some additional information that can help make our community stronger. I think we should look at that and seriously consider, especially if one of the previous presenters also commented that there's some national organizations that have some information out there. I definitely think those reserves need to be stronger. Even 1.2, 1.4 million, I don't think for our size city is sufficient. Our budget has increased significantly. I mean, we've had that 1.2, 1.4 million for a number of years. When our budget was much smaller, but our budget is much, much larger now, and I think it needs to be higher. We have an opportunity to increase those reserves without raising our taxes. There have been a lot of misdirected dollars over the last couple of years. That has been corrected. I think that those are dollars that we're not used to seeing in our city because they've been going to other things, firefighter overtime, aldermanic benefits. There was administrative fees from the TDDs that were misallocated, the golf tournament. I think all of these funds could be directed into our reserves. We could easily generate $100K out of that budget by just taking monies that have been going to other things and redirecting them into our reserves. I also think we need to look at some of the other areas around how we're spending our money. The fountain that we just built at Eager and Brentwood, that it will now requires, I believe it's $20,000 a year to maintain. Is there any way that we can bring that in-house? Can we minimize the cost that we are spending on that in some way, shape, or form? The recent the Meridian, again, another lawsuit related to the Meridian. Is there an opportunity there to renegotiate our settlement so that we don't have to give up as much of our revenue in the bottom half of those East revenues? Again, could those revenues get funneled into starting to build up our reserve? There have been municipalities across the country that have been declaring bankruptcies. Stockton, California has probably had the most visibility recently. Although the economy is blamed for much of the reasons for the bankruptcy, there's been a lot of recent articles that have said that the choices and the way that the cities have run themselves in these municipalities that have gone bankrupt also contributed to it. They were overbuilding, taking on too much debt, inflated cost structures. So these are all things I think that we can look at. I don't think we should continue to be doing, running the city and doing business as usual, as an earlier commenter implied. We do rely heavily on retail. It's good for now. Although there is a lot of research that indicates the type of retail that we've built in the last couple of years is not going to be sustainable over the long term, especially with the competition that is coming from all of the municipalities. The way they're structured in St. Louis, all of these municipalities are putting these boxes on asphalt parking lots, which I don't think is going to be sustainable. But in the long run, we hurt each other's communities when we do that. So I don't think that that's going to be as sustainable as we think. Now, right now, it looks good, but who would have ever thought that some of the things that were successful in the past ever would have gone away? So I don't think we can solely rely on retail. There's been several talk about the fact that we don't charge property taxes and that we could charge property tax in the future if we needed to, but that takes time. Those property taxes, was alluded to earlier, come in at the end of the year. There's been a lot of discussion. Oh, before I go into that, a question that I do have is when we had the $400K that we had to pay for the Meridian, we took a loan out for that instead of using our reserves. And if our reserves were so flush, why didn't we use the reserves to pay that back? Why did we have to take out a loan? That is a question that I do have that I'm interested in understanding if anybody can shed some light on that. There has been a lot of discussion about taking on some additional debt. I think the rec center is a possibility. I do think we need to think very long and hard about whether that's appropriate to do. It may be, we should have more of a discussion before we take on more debt about increasing our reserves. One of the things that I did review with Dina and Bola is that a policy would most likely be very beneficial for our city about our reserves, and I don't believe that we have one right now. So I would encourage the board to consider putting a policy in place about our reserves, establishing a percent that we want to achieve. We don't need to, we're probably not going to be able to build it up in a year, but over the long term, we should have a policy that establishes a stronger reserve. And finally, I do really appreciate your comments regarding to the flyers. As has been alluded to earlier, I do think that one of our rights is freedom of speech, and we do have the ability to be able to put information out there when we're concerned. If we don't feel we're getting the information, and again, we keep having these discussions, and I know you all feel that you are doing a great job, and you feel that you're communicating with us, but the fact that we keep coming up here like this probably means that it's not happening. And so I don't know how to cross that channel, but somehow we have to do it. Because I do agree, this is a great community, we have a lot of benefits, a lot of good things in this community. I'm not saying that we don't, but I'm saying that we need to do better. Thank you.
Susan Ryan, 9324 Pine Avenue. My biggest, beyond the long-standing issue I have, my biggest concern is respect. My biggest concern is respect. I am people, and I also see the information as somewhat inflammatory. However, again, we have the right to speak, and we have the right to have those in charge make us feel they are running the city, they understand, and that they can squelch our concerns, not to personally attack the other members on this board. I have heard it more than once. If you cannot work together and we cannot be respectful as a community, we are lost. And I hope that each of us recognize that everyone is trying to do the best they can. It doesn't always work when you follow the process. And my expectation is that each and every one of you be respectful to each other as well as us. Thank you.
Your Honor, I ask if we could pause to change tapes, please.
Okay, I'm actually going to close the public hearing and then I will address some of those comments. We're going to change the tape real quick and then we'll start up again. Here's mine. Too many papers.
All right, you may begin, sir.
Just so the general public knows, we are actually continuing this public hearing at our next meeting, which will be on October 1st. But again, the proposed rates, I just say it verbally, is 0 for the city's general revenue fund and 0 for our debt service. And the library will be somewhere in the area of 19 cents to 20 cents, I believe, in order to have their revenues increased. With respect to a couple of the other questions that were asked, and I'll try to take them one at a time. The general obligation bonds that we retired the debt on, those were approved by the voters. Again, it was a street bond issue back in the 80s, and then a park bond issue in 1993, I believe. When those were approved by the voters, they approved a certain amount of tax in order to pay for those. And now that we've paid those off, it goes away. We can't use that money for something. It's gone, basically. It's general obligation. As far as the sewer lateral program goes, and you can believe me or not, but I really think one of the reasons, first of all, even at $50 as a resident, I think is the cheapest insurance you can buy. What separates our program from a lot of the other municipalities, if you want to go around and check, a lot of municipalities they have a budget for a year, and once that budget is gone, they stop the program. Some municipalities, if you have a broken sewer lateral, you have to go out, get 3 bids. You then have to bring it up to the city, show them the 3 bids. You have to take the low bid, and then they may only give you a portion of that amount in order to have your sewer lateral fixed. Some of them a copay. Basically, they have a $4,000 maximum or $2,500 maximum. They're all different. But our program, one of the reasons it makes it so successful is because our men do all the work, for one thing. So we're able to do a lot more. I think, if Jim, correct me, we probably did more than 40 sewer laterals last year. Is Jim Nominson here? Yeah. Jim, is that correct?
That is correct.
We did more than 40 sewer laterals last year in the city of Brentwood, and I just knew that it was higher than that. That's why I picked that number. The other thing that we do here in the city of Brentwood that's different from the other municipalities is that we pay for sewer cleanouts. So if you have a blockage from your house out to the street, you can call a 24-hour number, and we pay for a service to come out and clean that out. I don't know any other municipality in St. Louis County that does that with their sewer lateral program. But we consider that lateral to be our responsibility as a city. So again, one of the things that's actually increased the number of them over the last couple of years is the sale of all the different houses. Almost whenever you have a sale of houses, because whenever there's a change in ownership now, realtors require that they have their sewer laterals cambered, and if there's a crack or something, then they want to repair before they're going to sell the house. So that's actually increased a lot of the numbers that we've done over the last couple of years. But again, our program, I think, is a lot different than some of the others because to me, we provide a better service than the other municipalities do. No, but if there's breakage, then we have to go in and fix it. I'm saying it's increased the number of repairs that we've had to do. It may only be a crack that it's working, but they're not going to sell the house until it's fixed. Whereas, again, until there's a problem, maybe that could have gone another 5 or 6 years before we actually had to go in and do it. Right. So anyway, I think that addressed some of the questions. Again, if anybody has any questions, I think
I was happy to hear that Karen Smith, a resident, came up and actually met with Bola and met with Gina to get some of the answers to her questions. And I've said that before too. I'm available. You can call me, you can email me. I'll try to get an answer for you if I don't have it as well. And we have to know what the questions are that you want to answer in order for us to give the information that you want. So I think we try to be as open and put out as much information as we can. So again, we will continue this public hearing at the next meeting because the county isn't done with their final evaluation of the numbers. Hopefully that'll be done by this Friday. We'll get it. We'll have the exact numbers for these other taxing numbers. But for residential property taxes, general fund, and debt service, it's 0. So we're going to open it up to public comment, which is anybody that wants to address the board can just come up and give us public comment. That's the next thing on the agenda. So if you have a question, you can come forward and ask.
Chris Kobler, 8615 Henrietta. I told you I'd be back. I'll be a bad penny, I guess. I have 2 things tonight. One is, are we ever going to address the situation on Brentwood Boulevard with Starbucks in the morning traffic? I work in the Center 40 building on Brentwood Boulevard, and I live on Henrietta. And I cannot tell you the number of times I drive or I try to get onto Brentwood Boulevard and cannot because the drive-thru is backed up. Or I cannot tell you the number of times I've almost been hit driving down Rosalie while someone's trying to cut through the parking lot to make an illegal turn to get into Starbucks. I personally avoid Starbucks like the plague in any place I go because I'm so sick of it. So if we need money, why don't we set a police officer on that parking lot every morning between 6:30 and 9:30, and I'll bet you we could write a whole bunch of illegal trespassing through the parking lot tickets. We'd get a bunch of money that way. So anyway, I would really appreciate it if somebody could address that situation and maybe do something about it because it's very annoying and I just bought a new car and I don't want to get hit, okay? It's a used car, by the way. Can't afford it. My second thing is, when I talked earlier about being responsible and respectful with my tax dollars, this goes to that point. There's been a lot of things over the years where we've spent money that we didn't necessarily need to spend, health insurance. Sometimes I think Brentwood Days gets a little out of control, but hey, whatever. It's a good time, the city gets together. I do have a question as to why we're buying, and Bola, I apologize, it's nothing directed at you personally, a brand new car for the city administrator that we're going to spend up to $40,000 on when there's a lot of folks in Brentwood who can't afford to even fix up things that are wrong with their houses. I bought a new car and I paid a lot less than $40,000 for it. Granted, it was used, but it looks like brand new. If anybody would like to go out on the parking lot and look, I'd be happy to show you. I believe your predecessor drove a pool car, and I'm trying to figure out why that's not good enough. That's not my problem. I'm sorry. I don't want to buy you a new car. It took me 15 years to be able to afford the car that I have, and I bought it used. And I don't want my tax dollars being spent in that manner. So find a cheaper car or drive a pool car. Thank you.
Catherine Genetti, 8819 Lawn Avenue. Sorry, I have a weak voice. I'll start on a positive note. I'm glad our taxes aren't going up. I'm glad to hear that flat out. I'm wondering, one of the questions that kept coming up that you didn't answer was why the city has not adapted the policy for reserve of 17%. Everybody else has done that. We've done things kind of keeping in line with other cities because that's the way it's done. Why are we not doing that one thing? I'd like to know what the average reserve is. I understand that it fluctuates, but I'd like to know what it is. And, if we need a way to build reserve, I would say that maybe you all should decrease salaries, should think about giving up health insurance benefits, should think about not buying a new car, maybe a used one would be good enough. You know, I've bought used cars for years. The Acuras are great. I'll vouch for them. I'm on my third one. And they're way under $40,000. You know, we have to look at things, you know, I mean, I think the big thing is we're kind of concerned about mismanagement of money in many different areas. We have Chris Seemeyer with $30,000. We have the fire department that was overpaid for maintenance for 24 years. You know, your all salaries is not keeping in line with other people. You know, it's just hard to understand how you all are viewing the financial picture. $20,000 for the fountain, it's lovely, but it's not that lovely. So, you know, I think you all need to get control of what's going on financially. You know, we are not, as citizens, comfortable with how our money is being managed.
Matt Saunders, 2326 Park Ridge. At the last meeting, it was brought up to Patrol High School. I just want everyone to know the police were there the next morning at like 6:30 a.m. Fortunately, I spotted the car before I went to the stop sign. So, no, kidding. So we have a great police department. I just think people should know that. They do a absolutely good job. Also, for those of you that don't know, I think, Pat, you've been on the board the longest, right? The retail planning that's going on in Brentwood, if you guys don't know it, that's the #1 bread company in the country. So when you look at the retail planning that the board has done long-term, they really deserve a lot of credit for that because we are the most gifted location, and they've done a great job of, I also think it's the #1 Target store in the country too. One of the top? Yes. So I think that they deserve a lot of credit, the long-term planners who've done that. And so I just want to say thank you for that. Our fiscal future, if our monies are properly watched, and they will be, is in great shape. Now, on another note, I just have one little problem. It really troubles me when I have to come up here and watch other aldermen not like the alderman from our ward. You called her, well, tonight she's been negligent. She's been accused of blackmail. She's not a team player. I mean, that really troubles me, and the only question I would ask any of you is, when has she not told the truth? And when I see her at nights when she's not working for the city, I keep reminding her, just tell the truth. The truth will set you free. And so I want to say to the citizens who come up to me when I'm ushering, running the athletic association, coaching teams, I want to just say thank you for your support of Alderman Saunders, because you're what keep her going. Thank you.
Barry Williams, 9001 Pine Avenue. And as you know, I'm a longtime resident of Brentwood. I love this community. I've also worked in municipal government quite a bit. I worked for the District of Columbia City Council for a time, and I worked for Mayor Harmon in the city of St. Louis. I worked for the city of Brentwood back in the 1970s in the park department. I also worked for the St. Louis County Municipal League. And I'm troubled by the reserves. I think it's too low. You know, you look at all these surrounding communities that we all respect very highly, and they're doing a better job on that. I think we need to do a better job. I would say that our budget is, I don't know, maybe this is too strong a word, but a little bit precarious. I'm troubled by the really low reserves. And I think we need to do a better job with the reserves. And I've got a suggestion for you. And, you know, this is something that's been on my mind for a while now. I was very proud of my Ward 1 Alderman, Anthony Harper, last year, when he was very upset with this idea that after a city official was convicted of a felony, that rather than fire this individual and try to recoup the taxpayers' money, we did the opposite. Or I should say you did. This body did the opposite. Instead of firing Chris Seemeyer and trying to be a good fiduciary of the taxpayers and try to claw back the money that he took from us, You rewarded this felon by allowing him the opportunity to resign, which then made it possible for him to get all of his unused sick leave, all of his unused vacation leave, as well as a pension that's going to amount to about $36,000 a year. That's our money. That's $36,000 of our hard-earned taxpayers' money every year until he dies. And that's going to kick in about 6 or 7 years. He's not getting it right now, but he will at the age of 60. Anthony Harper said it very well. He was quoted in Paul Hampel's article in the Post-Dispatch on October 15th of last year as saying, "This is ridiculous. We shouldn't give that man another penny. We need to get that money back." I want this body to direct our city attorney, Frank Albrecht, to file a civil suit against Christopher C. Mayer. Apparently, we can't get the money back for the sick leave and the vacation leave that was cashed out because he turned around and used that $34,000 of our tax money to then pay the city for the $30,000 that he admitted stealing to go over to the Casino Queen and gamble away. So he used, as I understand it, he used our city, okay, Mayor, I'm sorry, correct me if I'm wrong. I know that he received about $34,000 in that settlement that Mr. Hess negotiated. And I was down there at his sentencing at the Eagleton Courthouse last October. And by the way, Chris is a friend of mine. I mean, I hate to be saying this because I like Chris. He did a lot of good for the city. It pains me to say this, but at a time when our fiscal situation is not good, it is really hard to explain how this city is not trying to get that money back. We need that money. So I really would like to see this city launch a civil lawsuit. Maybe we can't get the vacation leave and the sick leave back, but he is not yet getting that pension, which is going to amount to, according to Paul Hampel's article, beginning at the age of 60, Chris will draw from us $35,892 a year in pension. We are rewarding a felon. And you know, this city is 93 years old, and I'm not Barbara Gill, so I don't begin to profess to know how many other crooks have occupied City Hall over these last 93 years. I don't know if there have been worse crimes against the taxpayers of Brentwood. Perhaps there have been, I don't know. But this was a bad one, wouldn't you agree? This was pretty bad. And there are rumors, you know, I used to work at the County Municipal League, and I talked to mayors and council members in the county, and I've heard tell that it's a lot more than $30,000 that he took to the Casino Queen. I don't know that we'll ever know. Anyway, it was a bad crime. He shouldn't have been rewarded, and thank you, Anthony, for having the backbone and the courage to say so at the time. And I hope that you and your colleagues here will, we can't go back and re-litigate this in terms of the criminal case. That's double jeopardy, but we could launch a civil suit to try to recoup that money for us taxpayers. And I hope you will do that. Thank you.
Mark Wilson, 2214 Haddon Lane. One of the things that has been consistently requested, and this deals with, once again, our expenditures and where our reserves sit, but is why we don't get a comparative salary survey. And I did a little checking into exactly because one of the first things that people were concerned with was cost. And so I dug in with a number of cities and found out that in most cases, and certainly in the case of the private sector, that people go to your head of HR. Brentwood is one of the few communities of this size that actually has a head of HR. It's very surprising that that individual can't do this on their own. However, even if they, I'm not going to say I know what their daily duties are, but I do know that the cost of going to one of the top-notch companies that is very highly reputable is roughly $2,000 to do a survey of this sort. In the private sector, you have a comparable survey at least every 2 years. And that's not only to inform the company where they sit, but it's inform the employees where they sit compared to the rest of the people in their own industry. Well, I don't think, considering how long it's been since we've done a comparable salary survey, that spending $2,000 to find where we net out, when you go across the board, I certainly don't want to take money out of the pockets of our other citizens. I think they're very good at what they do. We want to keep them in place. However, when you do look at fiscal responsibility and how you pay your people, whether you're running your own private business or whether you're running the Citizens of Brentwood company, which is Brentwood, that you need to make certain that you're not overpaying for roles. Just going through a real quick check, we've got accounting clerks and executive secretaries making in excess of $60,000. When you go to other communities and they're making roughly $30,000 to $40,000. Now, I'm going to say we have some highly qualified people at Brentwood, but I don't think it's so much that they should be paid 40 to 50% higher than any other community. On top of that, the Seameyer issue is a real issue. And going back over time, what I would like to ask is, right now, this is not about putting Chris Seameyer in jail. And this is about rewarding or reimbursing the citizens of Brentwood for what was taken from them, what was taken from you. And this individual could be nice as they are. I don't know, Mr. Seameyer, certainly don't want to look at somebody in a punitive fashion. However, if you take from someone, you have to return it. And the bottom line is there is a handful of things from the overtime and firemen, which was somewhere in the neighborhood of minimum of $12,000 to $28,000 for 24 years, which is at a minimum $300,000. And when you get into the illegal approving of the benefits for the council, or for the Board of Aldermen, and for you, Mr. Mayor, and for whomever else was there. Now, once again, that it's not meant to take it out of your hide because you're not the one that did it, okay? But Mr. Seameyer is, and he illegally approved something that had to be passed by ordinance, as pointed to in the Missouri statutes, which we're guided by. Bottom line is if we go back at a minimum just on 3 Board of Alderpersons and yourself for 10 years, we're somewhere in the neighborhood of $230,000, and I'll guarantee you it goes much farther back than that. One of the things, Mr. Mayor, you said that you wanted transparency, and you said that you would help try to clarify this situation. And one of the things that we will need in order to go back with Mr. Seameyer is you had brought up that you thought you might have difficulties going back to these insurance companies because of HIPAA, and that you wouldn't be able to acquire certain information. Well, I have checked it out, and as long as you will approve it and will sign a waiver, then we can go back as citizens of Brentwood and go to that insurance company and find out exactly when your benefits started and when they stopped, as well as every other alderperson on this floor. And I would think that considering that this is in the best interest of the city of Brentwood, that you would open your arms to an opportunity like this, since it really doesn't do anything about getting into your numbers. It simply states the year that you were with this insurance company and when you left. Last but not least, and this gets back once again into the respect circumstance, and it has to do with Ms. Akande. Ms. Akande, your role is to run the day-to-day affairs and serve as an objective advisor to the mayor and the Board of Alderpersons. You should be equally open to the mayor and the Board of Alderpersons, all of them. That being said, you should be counseling this business unit on the administrative steps that they should be taking in order to maintain a prosperous municipality. You do sit on ICMA, do you not? Do you not belong to ICMA? Okay. So you were aware of these standards that were established, correct? As far as reserves? Okay. And I'll get back to the question I asked again, and that is, why or do we stand above everyone else, and have we chosen a different way to run our government versus what is recommended and versus what all our local municipalities around us run their government? But if there's a better way, all I want you to do is lay it out for us. However, the real problem that I've seen at these Board of Aldermen meetings during the last 6 months is that you, Ms. Akande, that want to ask for information or question, you're anything but forthcoming. You either are purposefully vague, sidestep questions, or dodge and provide answers to questions that aren't even posed or don't have anything to do with it. Most often, when you're challenged, you display indignance and disrespect, and you clearly have a very strong aversion for the truth. I would expect more professionally out of you, and I think we deserve more.
Close public comment. I would would like to reiterate, we will continue the public hearing. I would like to address a couple of the issues that were brought up. Karen, I forgot, Karen Smith had asked why we took out a loan in order to pay back the Meridian taxes that have been put into the wrong fund by the state. The reason was at that time the investments that we had were all in CDs, and so if we had cashed those out, we would have taken a penalty on that, and so it was cheaper interest rate wise for the loan. With respect to the HR survey, I think that is something that's being talked about with the board and putting one in place. It's not as simple as just calling up and getting survey or finding out what a public works person makes in another city or what a policeman makes in another city. If you're really going to do it properly, you need to compare what their job descriptions are and what their duties are within the cities in order to get real comparables. My understanding is Clayton just did it a year or two ago. Their survey cost $100,000. And so, yeah. Well,
I'll be happy to give you the information that you can put in touch with.
Okay, but I'm just saying though, again, you have to have all the information. They're not going to be able to do, well, we are looking into it and it's something that we want to do, okay? It just needs to be talked about and what the process is and how in depth we want to have it done. With respect to Chris Seemeyer, again, I think there's a lot of rumors out there, as Barry indicated. Our police, the fine policemen in the city of Brentwood, did the investigation. It was determined how much Chris had taken. I will tell you, it was caught relatively quickly, even though that's not what the rumors say. At the point that he was arrested, of the $30,000, he had already paid back $15,000. As part of the settlement, he paid an additional $15,000 and reimbursed the city for all the funds he had taken, at which time he also gave up more than or around half of his accrued vacation and sick days in order to cover our legal expenses for that process. So we did recoup the money from Chris Seemeyer that was taken from the city of Brentwood and what it cost us to go through that process. And so anyway, I will leave it at that. I think as far as the policy goes, I agree, and it's something that staff is working on and putting a policy together to set a benchmark for our reserves as we go forward. And again, this is something we've been working towards for a number of years to get to this point, when our TIFs are paid off and when we get the bond issues that were paid off, so we can start doing those kinds of things. We look for ways to save money all the time, and I'll use one of our best examples as another one, is our trash service. We implemented our own trash service, I think 5 or 6 years ago, and started, instead of paying a vendor to do it, we do it ourselves. We have saved almost $10,000 a month since the inception of that program, because our tipping fees are less, and we control the cost much better. And on top of that, I think we have great service. We have best trash service in any municipality in St. Louis County. And we save money by doing that. And those are big things. And so we try to do that. And that's what's been able to get us to the point where we are today. And again, I'll reiterate, I think we do have some high paid, not high, I think we have some of our employees are a little bit above the average of some of the other municipalities, but I think that's a good thing, because we have employees that are dedicated to the city of Brentwood doing an outstanding job for us, from our public works all the way through our police and fire. And I think that's important. If you want to retain those good employees, you need to give them the benefits and you need to pay them. And so, but we want to do a survey and compare. You don't want to be outrageous with it. I agree 100%. And so I think that's something that has been talked a little bit about, ways and means. But again, we just need to set that criteria for how we do that survey and make sure we're doing it appropriately. So with that, I will make a motion, because I would ask for a motion to place bills number 5697, 5698, and 5699 on hold till we conclude the public hearing at our next meeting. Sewer lateral as well. We'll just do them all at one time. That's fine.
If we do this, Your Honor, are we still going to fall within the time schedule that St. Louis County has established?
We were granted an
So that
extension on Friday that we have until October 2nd.
And our next meeting is Monday the 1st. I'll make the motion, Your Honor, to put the 3 bills on hold till the
Second.
October 1st meeting. Now, at that time, Bola, can we get a draft of the bills with all the cleanliness instead of rev, and switch? Thank you very much.
Your Honor,
Alderman Kramer.
since we have the motion on the floor, point of clarification, we originally were going to discuss the rec center topic after the Public Works Committee, hold on, let me finish.
Okay, I'm sorry.
After the Public Works Committee had their meeting, but since we're having our meeting tonight, that's not possible. But since the Aldermanic meeting is scheduled for October 1st, would normally be at 7 o'clock, will that now be at 6 o'clock?
Not unless the board wants it to be.
No,
7 o'clock's fine.
Because we are discussing the rec center at the next Public Works Committee meeting. which
We'll
is
do it
this
under the
September.
public works report.
Okay.
Good. So we had a first and a second. Roll call, please.
Alderman Saunders.
Yes.
Alderman Master.
Yes.
Alderman
Yes.
Alderman Tui.
Yes.
Alderman Kramer.
Yes.
Alderman Robertson.
Yes.
Alderman Williams.
Yes.
Alderman Marshall.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Next item, if I could have a motion for the first and second reading of bills number,
Your
or
Honor,
bill,
if
I'm
I
sorry,
may.
Alderman Lay.
Can I make a comment for what happened in the public session?
Right.
As an alderman, I'd like to thank the library board. You had a tough task. I know it didn't go smoothly. I know it had emotion in it, but I like the decision that you all came back with. I like the fact that you called a meeting to get it further discussed. I like the results of that meeting, and I thank you for taking the extra time to work it through. I think that was very well done.
We thank you for bringing it to our attention.
All right. Roll call, please. Oh, I'm sorry. First, I need a motion for first and second reading of bill number 5700.
So moved, Your Honor.
And second? Just for the reading, thank you. We had a first and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, motion carries. First reading of bill number 5700, please.
First reading bill number 5700 by title only, an ordinance authorizing the city administrator to enter into a temporary easement agreement and a permanent easement agreement between the city of Brentwood and Postal Properties, Hanley Industrial LLC, a Missouri limited liability company.
Synopsis, please.
Yes, Your Honor, this is more good news for our sidewalk projects throughout the city, including through Hanley Industrial Court and Rose. Bill 5700, an ordinance authorizing the city administrator of the city of Brentwood to enter into a temporary easement agreement and a permanent easement agreement between the city of Brentwood and, who would that be? Postal Properties. This bill is for an ordinance to authorize the city administrator to enter into a temporary construction easement and a permanent sidewalk easement between the city of Brentwood and Postal Properties, 1449 Strasser Road. The Brentwood Pedestrian Transit Improvement Project consists of constructing new sidewalks from Memorial Park to the Brentwood Metrolink station within Hanley Industrial Court. The new sidewalks will be ADA compliant, improve pedestrian safety, and provide an amenity for the surrounding property owners and businesses whose customers and employees walk within the area. The STP, Surface Transportation Program grant, will fund 80% of the right-of-way acquisition, and 20% of that is going to be funded by the Hanley Road Corridor Transportation Development District, or the TDD. The owner requests the city pay temporary construction easement of $3,274 and a permanent sidewalk easement of $6,726 for a total of $10,000.
Thank you. Alderman Saunders.
Is Ellen Rochefort here?
Yes.
Hi, Ellen. I wanted to know again, who is the owner of the property? I looked up on the, because I didn't get the business license, Secretary of State, but it just had the registered agent. And the other question is, did they receive tax assistance from us?
No, they didn't. No tax assistance.
That's correct. No tax assistance has been received by the city, and the owner is Postal Properties.
Ellen, could you face this one, please?
One of the owners is Ridge Postal Properties, and then he does have partners as well.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Ellen, please.
Alderman Lay.
Your Honor, if I may. Ellen, the value that we're paying for the sidewalk doesn't seem to be in line with the other state properties that we did. If we vote this down this evening, is there any real negotiating room to get the property values and the costing down for the compensation?
We have 8 parcels from which we're requesting donations. 5 of those were donated, and 3 were actually have negotiated a settlement agreement to purchase. The city, we made an initial offer based on the cost estimate that was provided by an appraiser that the city paid. The owner of the property had an appraisal done and submitted a counter offer, and then we submitted our final offer, which was below what his counter offer was, but still above the appraised value, the fair market value that we obtained from our own appraisal. So we feel like we've exhausted all negotiations at this point. The next step would be considering our next option, which is condemnation, which is considerably more expensive just to get to the decision by the condemnation board than the $10,000 that the easement is going to cost. So that's why
I just wanted to clarify why I asked about the tax assistance, Ellen, and you probably know, but for the audience, because we're paying for putting in, with a grant, but the city puts up some of the money too, and so typically landowners will donate the property because we're improving their property by putting sidewalks. And so it is their right to ask for money. They do not have to, so it's fine that they're asking for it. But since the benefit, they're getting the sidewalks, we're doing the work, we're paying the money for the sidewalks, the courtesy is to donate the property. And especially if we've given them tax assistance, I just like to note that because I think then they should really be willing to help us out. It's just my personal thing. Thank you.
Alderman Kramer.
Your Honor, we've spoken about this at a couple of different meetings, and I don't want to repeat what Alderwoman Saunders just mentioned, but I do want to publicly applaud those property owners in the target area zone for donating their property for the public good. It's a benefit that our citizens are going to reap the benefits from for a number of generations, hopefully in the future. Hanley Industrial Court was never intended to be a pedestrian-friendly area. There are some of our property owners in there that have just begun to do well since the economy has begun to turn around. Still, there are some long-term owners that have done well for generations, and we were not asking for that much. And I really applaud Ellen for all the hard work that she put into for this project. I'm looking forward to seeing it be completed, and that's all I have. Thank you.
Second reading, please.
Second reading, bill number 5700 by title only, an ordinance authorizing the city administrator to enter into a temporary easement agreement and a permanent easement agreement between the city of Brentwood and Postal Properties, Hanley Industrial LLC, a Missouri limited liability company.
Questions? A motion, please.
Motion to approve as submitted, Your Honor.
Second?
Second.
Alderman Saunders. Motion is made by Alderman Kramer, second by Alderwoman Saunders to approve bill number 5700. Roll call, please.
Alderwoman Saunders?
Yes.
Alderwoman Mansfield?
Yes.
Alderman Levy?
No.
Alderman Tootie?
Yes.
Alderman Kramer?
Yes.
Alderman Robinson?
Yes.
Alderman Nguyen?
Yes.
Alderman Harper?
Yes.
Bill number 5700 is now ordinance number 4373.
Thank you. Resolution 982, synopsis, please.
Your Honor, Resolution 982 is one that provides for the consumption of beer, wine, and other liquors. Brentwood Parks and Recreation is hosting Brentwood's annual Madden Fest in Brentwood Park. Section 3.31 of the Brentwood Municipal Code allows the Board of Aldermen to approve consumption of intoxicating liquors on special occasions.
Okay. Any questions? Your Honor. Alderman Kramer. Alderman Leahy.
In section 1, because we mentioned dates, do we have to, should we not have a year, or is this resolution going to be binding across the board for future?
No,
This is a year.
It's just a
So then it should put this year's date in there. It only gives me the month and day. It does not give me a year as to when it takes effect. I'd like to amend section 1 and establish that it is the year 2012.
Thank you. Do we have a second for the change?
Second.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries to add the year. Good catch.
Your Honor, I make a motion to pass Resolution 982 as amended.
Wait, did we have a first and second on it already?
First, the first motion was to add the year.
Okay.
That we've done.
All right,
Now the
okay.
motion to approve the resolution
As amended. Thank you. Second?
I'll second that, Your Honor.
Motion was made by Alderman Lay, second by Alderman Kramer. Roll call, please.
Alderman Saunders?
Yes.
Alderman Madison?
Yes.
Alderman Lady?
Yes.
Alderman Toohey?
Yes.
Alderman Kramer?
Yes.
Alderman Robinson?
Yes.
Alderman Nguyen?
Yes.
Alderman Walker?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Next item, item 10, accounts against the city. Alderman Kramer. Oh, I'm sorry. Alderman Wayne.
I just want to make one statement. Somebody mentioned Madfest or now, I think the thing that struck me most was the year I was down there, 2 little boys were going by me with their mother, and they were going to go take a ride. I don't know anybody else anywhere that gives free rides to kids. And a parent can come there with their children, not bring any money, just bring a basket of food, or drink water if they want, and they can spend a whole day. And any money we spend that goes in to help that, I'm for it. I think it's a great thing.
Thank you. Alderman Kramer, accounts against the city.
Yes, Your Honor. You have before you the Alderman, the most up-to-date warrant list in the amount of $40,131.25. I have reviewed the warrant list with the city administrator and recommending its approval pending any questions from the board.
Alderman Leahy.
Thank you, Your Honor. If I may speak with Mr. Robinson, there are 3 different Breckenridge materials issues for purchasing concrete. Totals $11,031. That equals out for the 159 yards. That's less than $70 a cubic yard. I like that, because right now a cubic yard goes for $125 with 5-minute delivery fee to work with. Per yard. Yeah, per yard. So that's not bad, it's bad work. The question I have is the last item on the list is the Rock Hill Quarry dumping of $4,800. I'm assuming that's dumping the crushed concrete?
Everything we tore out.
Any chance of, I assume we're all done with all the concrete now?
In Hanley Industrial Court.
In the future, was there any chance of dumping that material with St. Louis County with them doing the 270 construction? Because they're pulverizing everything to backfill for their road, for their construction of 270 extra.
We can obviously check into that, but I'm going to assume they probably will say no, but we can check into it.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Do I have a motion to approve the warrant list?
Motion to approve as submitted, Your Honor.
Second, Your Honor.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries. Public Works Committee.
No report, Your Honor, just to note that we will have a meeting Wednesday.
Great. Ways and Means.
Yes, Your Honor, we have an evening meeting coming up this week. Our meeting is actually tomorrow at 6:30 over at the council chambers. We'll be discussing the 2013 budget as well as continuing our view of the employee handbook and any other topics that happen to come up. If you have a chance to grab dinner and come on by afterwards, please join us. Once again, it's an evening meeting tomorrow at 6:30.
Okay. Actually, I'm sorry, I skipped the Public Safety Committee. When is there?
Well, we have a meeting on the 27th. Kramer will be in charge. Since I'll be
out
going to
of
see my new granddaughter.
Good. Okay. City Attorney.
No report, Your Honor.
Thank you. City Clerk Administrator.
No report, Your Honor.
Excise Commissioner, we have one.
We have a request for a temporary liquor license, a company known as the Refined Room, located at 2525 South Brentwood Boulevard. They're having a soft opening on 10/5 of this year, and they're asking for temporary license to serve beer and wine.
Okay, thank you. Any questions?
Motion to approve the request, Your Honor.
And second?
Second.
Motion was made by Alderman Lee, second by Alderman Saunders. All in favor, say aye.
Aye. Correction, Your Honor.
What's that?
Second.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
She speaks up so much.
Alderwoman Manister, sorry about that.
That's okay.
All right, actually, Director of Planning, Ellen, do you have anything further? I think I need new glasses, I keep skipping things on these.
Just have one item, it's a special use permit application for PetSmart. PetSmart has made this request before and staff forwarded it to the Board of Aldermen. It's just to hold a dog adoption event on the parking lot in front of the PetSmart location. It will take up 8 parking spaces, but they do redirect their staff to park on the north parking lot during the event to make up for that loss. They've held these before and staff hasn't received any complaints, so they're requesting approval for September 15th and 16th, 2012 from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m.
Okay. Questions?
Yes, Your Honor, not a question, just a comment. I just want to applaud, like to applaud PetSmart for taking the suggestion or making the suggestion to relocate their employee parking. The promenade, which is one of our more successful areas, sometimes you almost need a helicopter to be able to get in and out of that place. And 8 parking spaces on a Saturday is a lot. But we do like PetSmart, with everything they stand for is with our other retailers, so appreciate them reallocating their employee parking for the day. Thank you.
Okay. Alan, just want to, have they ever said anything about their hotel construction?
No, the last couple times I've asked them, it's just indefinitely on hold.
Okay. Just curious. Okay, thanks.
Probably.
Your Honor, by procedure, their prior approval has expired.
That's correct.
If they come back and want to do something, we go through the whole process.
Yes.
Library, anything further? Thank you. Municipal League, the Municipal League meeting is next, starting Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday, and into Wednesday next week. And if anybody, any of the elected officials would like to attend, there's some worthwhile meetings taking place there. So, communications.
Yes, Your Honor, just a reminder to all the residents, if you have yet to sign up for Code Red, please go to the city website and check it out. It's a wonderful benefit for our residents, a wonderful warning and notification device. It takes a very small amount of time to get involved, and all the information is private and not shared. Thank you.
We will have an executive session for a personnel matter following this meeting. So at this time, I will open it back up to the public if there are any other public comments.
Wait a minute, Your Honor. Unfinished business.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry. Unfinished business first.
And new business.
All right, I got it.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Well, I'd like to go to the new business
Okay,
section.
Alderman Saunders, you have unfinished?
No, I was good.
Yeah.
You go ahead.
All right.
Any unfinished business? New business.
I'll yield to Maureen if I may.
Okay.
Well, I was going to, I need to cancel my Ward 1 meeting. I normally, last month was the first one. We decided we'd have it on the second Tuesday of the month, but Ways and Means was rescheduled to that day in my era, And so I need to cancel my Ward 1 meeting for this Tuesday, for tomorrow night, because I have to attend the Ways and Means meeting. And Andy's invited me to share on his
Please.
Ward 3 on the 3rd.
The 18th of September.
The 18th. So we will go ahead and do a joint board meeting on the 18th of September to let you know. And the other thing is in listening to the residents and that, I am going to go ahead and make a motion that this board pursues civil action against Christine L.
I'll second it. I think before we vote on that, I think we need to, that would be legal action that I think needs to be discussed in the executive session.
Your Honor, I believe the executive session would have to be amended because currently it only includes.
We would have to do that. We would have to do it at our next meeting.
Yeah.
The new business, Your Honor?
Personnel?
Well, I need to actually have the first and second removed. We should not take that action without full discussion of the board.
Point of order, if the motion is that the board considers such, the motion could be made, and thus we can move it and put it on an agenda for further discussion for the board to take action on if we wish to approve or disapprove. So the motion is proper.
No, I think being a legal matter, though, it needs to be discussed. The motion was to pursue legal action.
I'll amend my motion. Will you rescind the second?
Okay.
Thank you. So I would amend my motion then to consider pursuing civil action against Christine Mayer.
Okay.
I'll second that.
That, Frank, correct me if I'm wrong, but under procedure, that would allow it to be placed to the agenda.
Yes.
No, it would have to be on the next, because you have notification things and postings that have to be done.
Okay. Any other discussion? Roll call.
Alderwoman Saunders.
Yes.
Alderwoman Master.
Yes.
Alderman Lady.
Yes.
Alderman Tui.
Yes.
Alderman Kramer.
Yes.
Alderman Robinson.
Yes.
Alderman Nguyen.
Yes.
Alderman Harper.
Yes.
Other new business, if I may, Your Honor.
Yes.
Thank you, sir. General announcements, just so to keep everybody informed. Madden Fest Days is this Friday and Saturday. Please pray for good weather on Friday night. And the fireworks will be on Saturday. Come on down. October the 6th, since we don't have a meeting other than the October 1st one, is the Tri-City Garage Sale. There is still spaces available at the rec center for the parking lot tailgate arrangement. You do need to file a permit. It's from 7 a.m. to 10 a.m. and you get a hold of Tracy at the rec center. This is in coordination with both the city of Brentwood, the city of Maplewood, the city of Richmond Heights, thank you, to work with. And in the past, it's been an enjoyable arrangement. So if you have some things in cleaning out the house, the garage, the shed, this is a way of helping getting done with decent attendance moving throughout the area. So please consider getting involved. And as Maureen mentioned, the Ward 3 meeting and the Ward 1 meeting will be Tuesday night, the 18th of September. I'm out of town the last week of the month, so we did shift. It's at 7 p.m. at the City Hall in the main council room. It's an informal, come on up and discuss issues of importance. Karen Smith mentioned that she came up and had the chance to discuss questions with the city administrator and the finance. Karen is one of the few people that constantly attend the Ward 3 meetings and comes with wonderful questions. Love to get better attendance. You all came this evening because of the flyers. You came last meeting because of flyers. These are wonderful. Stay involved. Come get more information. The meetings are on the websites, YouTube and all that type thing. And the staff and the aldermen are available. Make the phone calls. Keep the information flowing. That's how you improve the city. There's nothing wrong with trying. That's my end.
And just so you know, and nothing, I'm just going to start at 6:30.
Oh, okay.
The only reason is I have signs that say 6:30.
Oh, okay.
So
Let's start at
Ward 1 can start a little earlier.
We'll start at
Join us.
6:30.
Thank
We'll
you.
be happy to start at 6:30.
Thank you.
All are welcome, and I'll get the doors open.
Thank you.
Yes, anyone's welcome at the meeting.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you. New business. Actually, that was new. Any other addition?
I just want to say, comment on the library board. I'm just disappointed in some of the disrespect I received this week. These are volunteers who work hard. You try and give an environment for our children, some of our older residents to go read, use the internet, give them comfortable chairs, computers. They're not paid. They have no incentive to try and trick everyone and rob you of your tax dollars. If you really spend some time looking at the Hancock Amendment, it's very confusing material. And if you also look at the legal language and the way bills are supposed to be written, or I'm sorry, the propositions, they're very confined, and they couldn't word it in a way saying this is your actual tax rate and we want to raise it to 30 cents. They had to say this is what the voter-approved former tax rate was. This is what we're amending for the new tax rate. I just don't like the way they were treated. I think, Alderman Saunders, I just say, I think we need to be careful sometimes the language we use when addressing them. That seem very accusatory. And I understand you went to their meeting saying you represented the board. That wasn't the case. Additionally, you told them they weren't their own taxing municipality, which they are. And we just need to be careful we have our facts straight when we show up at their meetings and start accusing them. We also need to respect they have Robert's Rule of Order as well. And you just can't go on their meetings and interrupt them and talk anytime.
And I have a response to that, since you were not at the meeting, and I'm sure received one side of the meeting. I went to the meeting just because by fluke I found out about it. And I thought, I'm going to go because I had done some research after that meeting because some of the information that I learned at Ways and Means was not correct. And I was met with great hostility at that meeting. Somebody who had asked me for advice early on when the C-Mayor thing was going on with the library. And I just went in there to explain the $19 valuation versus the $57 valuation. A vote was going to be taken before I was allowed to speak. I was instructed that the comments were after the vote at the end of the meeting. And I said, as an alderperson, not the board, but as me, an alderwoman that sat on Ways and Means and listened to the explanations that the director had given, and I had, a different take on it, I came. I wish it had been recorded, first of all, as to how I even got to go up to the whiteboard and show the $19 and $57 difference. But I did bring along, I went out to the taxing authority because I didn't understand the taxes. I'm brand new to this process. I did all my homework on my own because I got the information regarding the tax rates on Friday night of Labor Day weekend, and I meet on Ways and Means on Tuesday night after I've worked all day. So I'm getting into complicated Hancock tax rate information and expected to take a vote. Then move to an emergency library board meeting. Once again, there's a vote going. And to me right now, the rate is set at 30 cents and not by the way I do the math. I was trying to explain, I agree sometimes because of the interjection and feeling like I shouldn't even be speaking there. I got anxious and maybe I came home. I felt awful that it didn't go as well. I was contacted by the Patch. I wrote a very nice comment about the board on there. I said they did the right thing. I was proud of them, and it was an example of good governance. That was my comment on the Patch to the action that was taken by that board that night. So there's two sides to every story. I still, when I went to the St. Louis County tax revenue site, other libraries are listed as separate taxing districts. Brentwood has our rate all rolled together with the library, the general fund, the debt service, and the pension. So I didn't understand why it was pulled apart. I asked Vicki, but again, I'm being, no, you're not supposed to be talking, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, I just need this answered. And she said it's a very gray area. It's a legal area, it's a gray area. So I'm thinking if it's a gray area, we're moving too fast. I do have to commend Brian, the attorney. He helped me with the math. He clarified what the intent of the board was. He said they went with the $125,000 and they backed in to what they wanted, the nickel. They started with what they wanted to increase their income by, not $400,000, but by $125,000. And that's how they backed into it. And he felt the intention was only to charge the $19. And he said at the end of the meeting that he was aware of the .1569 rate going into this. Now, since then, I've questioned, and I see the smirk, Vicki. I got it all now. And I heard the comment earlier when other people were speaking, the outburst. When I went today to talk to Bola, I asked her, in 2012, which year, first of all, which years are the assessment years and which are the non-assessment years? Which years are the reassessment years? Right, and which year can we increase the tax in?
In a non-reassessment.
In an even year. Could we have raised the tax to 20 cents without going for a ceiling increase from 25 to 30 for the library, since we were able to, was our assessed valuation such that we could not? And Bola said she didn't know, I would have to ask Vicki. So that's where I stand, and it was just a question because I did go back home, I did read all about the Hancock, I did read about ceilings and try to educate and try to ask questions. I went to Bola this morning. My minutes were, my ordinances that I'm supposed to vote on have all the wrong rates and everything else. I came early, I thought I'm going to get this clarified, I'm not going to I try to do things with due process, but when I only get less than 24 hours to do things and I have to work, the process isn't always pretty. But I'm doing my best.
I have to ask to pause and change tape. Thank you. And in the interest of continuity, the camera is still with you if you have anything else.
I'm finished, thank you.
Okay, we'll open up to public comment.
Oh, and my quote here for the patch is in error. Cindy just pointed out to me. I am so proud of our library board and staff, she said after the meeting. The library board agreed to only increase the library tax rate by a nickel, even when they found out at the last minute that they could actually increase the rate by 15 cents to the 30-cent ceiling. They honored what they told the public and are a wonderful example of good governance.
With all due respect, Mr. Toohey, you were not at that meeting. I was at both the Ways and Means meeting and I was at the Special Emergency Board of Library meeting. The disrespect, you could cut it with a knife. And unprofessionalism, Maureen, I can't believe the way she was treated. I was dumbfounded. I'd like to know, did the board vote for the 30 cents before they came back and voted for the 15 cents? Or the 20, or the nickel? How many votes did you take?
One before
At the special meeting?
As a point of order, can we have a name?
Yes, and your name.
Julie Pozo, Alderman Sinclair. Shame on all of you.
Sherman Lee, 8772 Pine in Ward 2. I just stepped down from the library board. I was there for 10 years. I was not at either of these meetings. I appreciate all the passion around here because it seems like everybody really wants to do what's right for the city. I am kind of curious because the library board does have a liaison from the Board of Aldermen. So I'm just curious, was there any coordinated effort on the Alderman before going to the it was an emergency library board meeting, is that right? Yes. Right, so a lot of things happen very quickly, but I know that Lee has been the liaison, so that's one question on the library. I have another comment about a different topic, but I don't know if I should just let this sit and come back or just go ahead.
Go ahead.
All right, there's a lot of emotion and passion about the Chris Seemeyer issue, and we now have a motion, which is great. Hopefully we're working towards a resolution around Chris Seemeyer, but I'd like to know what the Board of Aldermen is planning to do around preventing future cases. Okay, I know from the world where I work, it's always very dicey when somebody needs to resign or it's about to be fired, and there may not be clear rules about what either party can do in lawsuits, and we know that certain things can't be said because it's a personnel issue. So if the Board of Aldermen collectively could speak to that, I certainly would appreciate it. I think most people would appreciate that. Finally, I'll add a third comment. I'm tired, and actually I'm kind of exhausted by an us versus them attitude here in Brentwood. I think Brentwood is a great place to live. I moved here from U City. I pay less than half the taxes I did in U City. I get twice, in my opinion, twice the city services, and we have a great school district. Brentwood is not broken. We have a great place to live. Each of you aldermen feel very, very loyal to your constituency. That's fantastic. But I would love to see the Board of Aldermen live up to a higher standard. You all need to work together. Not me versus you, or us versus them. We need proof that you're actually working for the benefit of the entire city. And the city includes not just homeowners, not just condo owners, not just renters. It also includes commercial, industrial, retail, et cetera. Okay? So please, thank you very much.
Can I come back?
Yeah. Last comment.
This is in regard to the Chris Seamayer civil lawsuit. I would hope that all of you seriously consider doing that. And let me remind you, I can give you estimates. You know, we've figured up estimates over the years, probably how much money this has gone out. And this is Chris Seamayer. Chris Seamayer, okay, he allegedly, or he took $30,000 that we know and embezzled. And I came up with $288,000. He illegally approved fireman overtime annually at a rate of $12,000 to $28,000 annually for 24 years. He illegally approved budgeting benefits for specific elected officials. Mayor, by your estimate, that was by your estimate, that came to about $230,000. Let's see, there was a minimum, and that's just 10 years. That's just going back 10 years. It probably was more than that. You've got probably $1,500 a year in misappropriated taxpayer monies for the baseball writers' dinner, and that, I don't know how many years that went on, say 10 years, you know, so that comes up to about $15,000. $8,000 a year misappropriated taxpayer monies via the golf tournament, charity donations. $1,500. I guess that comes up to, if that was over 10 years, probably another $80,000. If you add all of this up, we're at least, oh, and that doesn't even, the T-Mobile phones, that I think that was $16,000. And if you add all that up, we're reaching almost $1 million here. So that didn't help the reserve. So I hope you'll all take that seriously.
Mayor and Alderman, I want to thank you very much for that unanimous vote to look into the idea of a civil action against Chris. I think it was very powerful. And as someone just said, you know, it's a shame to see the infighting even within the board, and it was very refreshing to see that unanimous vote. Wow, very, very nice to see. Thank you. I don't mean any disrespect to our city administrator, but in light of the recent rash of gun violence in the city, the home invasion and the abduction, I really think it would be in the public interest if that $40,000 that's being earmarked for the new automobile instead be reprogrammed for the police department.
We'll close public comment, and we will go to our executive meeting. Actually, can I have a motion to go in executive session?
There were two questions.
Which were?
How many votes were taken at the library board?
Well, they can, again,
okay, you're gonna,
they can do that.
Okay. Motion to go to return to executive.
And second?
I'll second that.
Motion's made by Alderman Lee, second by Alderman Kramer to go into executive session. Roll call, please.
Yes. Alderman.
Yes.
Alderman.
Yes.
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 Yes.